Well, it's that time. The snow started to fall, and of course I'm 2 weeks late in getting things ready for it, so something I've been wanting to do with this for a while, and I'm just going to finally get around to it. This is my old Bolens snowblower. Um, if I had to guess, I'd say mid 80s, early 80s, late 70s. Like I said, it's a Bolens by FMC at the time. It's a 524 model, 5 horsepower, 24-inch cut. These are the ones that, if you can find one like this, find one and buy it. Only because these things are not just thin stamped metal that you find at Home Depot anymore. Even though you spend two grand on a snowblower, you can physically go up to the chute and push down on it and bend the metal. This stuff has like, I'd probably say that the barrel on this thing probably has like 1/8 inch steel, the entire thing. It's got a Tecumseh engine on it. It is a little underpowered. If I had one gripe about this thing, it's that it's only a 5 horsepower. I don't know. I wish it was an 8. I'm sure I could find an 8 and put it on it, but it's not broke, so the heck with it. Anyways, ever since I got this thing, it was kind of sketchy when you'd put it in drive gears. It'd be intermittently, it would go, intermittently stop, and pretty much the way these things work is there's a friction disc inside here that gets dry, rotten, and cracked and worn. When you engage the lever up top there, it pulls down on this hard linkage and pulls a flat plate up onto the spinny wheel, which is what I'll call it. So in other words, that kind of just dry rots and deteriorates over time, leading to decreased performance in the driving or the maneuverability of this thing. So I found one online. Didn't even know if it was the right part. I just guessed. It said Bolens. There really can't be that many, but we'll go through putting this thing on. First of all, I'd like to say that I got this off of Amazon. It is, hold on. There's the part numbers. It fits like 9 million different snow blowers. And like I said, all it is a disc, metal disc, and has rubber overmolded onto it. You want to make sure that you don't get any type of lubricant or grease or anything on this. So first thing I did to get this show on the road was took the 2 bolts out for the belly pan. I'll set this over here. And then we can expose the innards. As you can see here, when I was talking about earlier, this plate right here is what makes contact with this friction disc, which I can already tell has been replaced at one point in time, and I paid less than that for this one, shipped to my door in a day. I think I paid $11 or $12 for the new one on Amazon Prime. But anyways, sometimes depending on how this linkage is set up, there's like a whole bunch of levers and stuff in this area, which surprisingly I lucked out on this one. This one's set up a little bit differently, and seems to be much easier. So what you want to do, and what I already did, was blast your knuckles off. You want to get your biggest adjustable, and you want to pretty much this thing's going to cooperate, which it probably won't. I got to loosen this up a smidge. Lock that on there to prevent it from spinning, and you'll take your 1/2-inch wrench or ratchet or whatever. All the batteries on my impact tools are dead, so I did it by hand. Anyways, these are all loose, so we'll take all of these off. Let me pause it here while I take all these off, and then we'll get right back with you. Okay, so I'm back. You can see this is again the new one, and this is the one that was on it. Now the one that was on it wasn't terrible, but you can tell it's kind of flat. See if I can zoom in on that. Negative. There we go. So it's got some flat spots on it. It's not perfect. It is kind of hard, where this one's a little softer, more bitier. So I'll keep the old one around as a spare in case I need, you know, to fix it somehow. But you can even tell, look how cracked and dry rotten that is. But anyways, okay, so we'll set this old one aside and then take this new one, and at this point all that needs to happen is you fish it in over there, and then it locks on this hub. There's like a little hub in there. I don't know if you could see it. There's like a hub-centric ring or something on there, but that just pops over here, and we'll put the bolts back on. But before I do that, one thing I'd like to do before I do anything is I want to hit this chain with some lube or something. I always like to look around for Zerk fittings and pump grease into them. I could find them, but surprisingly enough, I can't find any Zerks on this. So I'll just hit it with some grease or something. And I don't want to put a ton of grease on it because I don't want it slinging onto that friction surface. But let me stop it here and I'll go get something to put on that. Alright, so since I couldn't find my tub of bearing grease, I found this on my shelf. Just synthetic brake caliper grease. You know, slide the pins on your brake calipers up. I'll brush a little bit of this on. The chain looks kind of dry, so should, you know, at least, I mean, it really isn't corroded now, so I can't imagine it'll corrode while I have it, but just a little preventative maintenance, I guess. So let me get this open and we'll slather some on. Okay, so I got my caliper grease. I'm just gonna paint a little of this on. It should spread a little bit once I run it, but I don't want a ton of it on because I don't want it to hit that friction disc, cause any more slippage. But I'll just put a little bit on. Alright, well, I think that's all I'm going to do, honestly. It's not like it's rotten or rusty or anything like that, so I'll put the cap back on this thing and we'll call that good. Hands are disgusting now. So, alright, so now back to it. Now what we want to do is take our friction disc, sneak it in there. Sorry for the shoddy camera work. And now comes the fun part of finding or lining up the holes. So let me get these started so it's not like a monkey effing a football here, and I'll turn the camera back on once I get everything started. Alright guys, back in business here. So I got all 5 of those bolts back through. A little tricky, but none of you couldn't handle. So let's get these things flush and then hit them with a little bit of ratchet action here. So might have to put the adjustable back on it. And when I did too, while I had this off, sorry for my hand just completely being in the way, but I actually took some brake clean and hit the disc below the rubber friction disc and wiped it off in case there was any residue of old rubber or oil or grease or anything on it. And again, if I had my impact ratchet, I wouldn't have to do this. I could just zip them on, but just hitting them hand tight, snugging them down a little bit. Alright, so now I got all those back on. I could take this back off. Now, as you can see, there is the installed new friction disc, which should hopefully take care of some of my intermittent, not surging, but sometimes it goes, you know, if it gets wet, it kind of doesn't like to move. There's also, like I said, some adjustment up here. I might have to play with that a little bit. It looks like the adjustment rod is bent a little bit, but that really shouldn't matter at all too much. But anyways, that is how you change the friction disc on this old Bolens riding, or I'm sorry, not riding tractor, snowblower. Like I said, I also threw some lube on this chain. Still don't see any Zerk fittings to pump grease into, but I did put some grease on the chain itself, so that should be enough. But as you can see, that's how that whole program works. Real easy to do. The parts are cheap. At some point I should probably put some new belts on this thing, but at this point I'll let it go. So the only thing left to do is reinstall the belly pan. I can show you how to do that real quick. Really not much to it. This just slides in these grooves here. And then I have 2 more 1/2-inch bolts. I go in here, and then that's it. Super simple. This thing's pretty old, but it works great. At the end of every season, I kind of hose it off, let it dry, and then I hit it with like a half a can of WD-40 all over everything that's orange, just to prevent surface rust, and then you know, just keep it as preserved as I can. One thing you'll want to do, and you know, I kind of wasn't planning on doing this, but the part showed up super quick, was when I got it started, I put a full tank of gas in. As you can see, this is dripping. So you might want to hold off on doing this until your gas tank is halfway. It's dripping on both sides, actually. One out the breather or the carb, and then over on the cap vent. But anyways, that's what we got to do for this thing. Hopefully that fixes it. But regardless, it's got a new one on it. A little bit of preventive maintenance here. Later this week, my electric start should be showing up, so I'll do a video on that. Let me just put this down so you can actually see what the unit looks like. Oh shit. There it is, old Bolens. Works great. Love it. Paid 50 bucks for this thing. Go to your Home Depot and try to push the metal down in your chute. That's an eighth or 16th of an inch right there, which you won't find on any of the newer Arians or anything like that. But old quality piece. I always like to look for the older stuff and try to fix that before I spend quadruple on something that's gonna last 3 or 4 years, because that's really all that you get out of newer stuff. Decks rot out on mowers. Engines are garbage on push mowers. Everything's garbage. Look for the older stuff. It doesn't have all creature comforts like heated hand grips and all that kind of crap, but definitely hold up in the long run. One thing I liked to add was it had a nylon joint here that just kind of deteriorated over time. Maybe I'll show a video on how to make one out of half-inch key stock, so it'll never come apart again. Works great. Super simple, cheap fix. Never have to worry about it again. You can do it yourself if you have a drill press. Alright guys, that's what I got for you today. Friction disc install on an old Bolens.